voice of growth, mastering the mind and market.
We're still kind of waiting on that one big breach. Can these language models actually understand the physical world? So reliance is one of the big risks. One of them, certainly, turn it off. Combination of AI, AGI, quantum kind of all colliding. And when it does, it's going to break all of our codes.
So you're essentially the canary in the coal mine for Skynet? Josh, tell me why AI security is so important now more than ever.
Great question. So certainly we're seeing AI everywhere. Everybody wants to adopt it. CEOs are telling their organizations that they need to start coming up with solutions that include AI. So the pressure is there. The momentum of adoption is there. But you can't go extremely fast without breaks. So that's where AI security comes in. So with the proliferation of AI everywhere, we also need to be thinking about the consequences of AI. So what are the vulnerabilities that exist within AI? What are some of the compliance pieces that are coming down? And what can you do to help responsibly use AI and responsibly bring AI into your organization?
Yeah, I think that word right there is very important, responsibility.
Yep.
We've had a couple of other guests, and we've talked with other AI experts about how important that is in not only in the organization, but as individuals. And I don't think people have an idea of how or what can happen. So give us an idea, Josh, of what's the worst that can happen.
The worst. Okay, so we're still kind of waiting on that one big breach that kind of wakes everybody up. So while we're waiting on that, there's been a lot of things that have happened. So some examples like I think it was Canadian Airlines had a situation where a customer used their chatbot, was able to get a refund for a flight that was not actually authorized by the airline, but was authorized by the chatbot, and they had to eventually pay that out. We had a Chevy dealership that decided to connect ChatGPT directly to the outside world and let customers engage with them as kind of like a sales associate. People quickly hacked it, turned it into a Tesla dealership, turned it into a Toyota dealership. Somebody actually made it write an agreement to sell them a car for $1 that was, quote unquote, legally binding. So there's these kinds of things. There's also, see, these are some generative AI examples. There's also, AI is all sorts of flavors. Computer vision is one flavor. So I've done work when I was with MITRE and the DoD, where we were fooling computer vision systems. So systems that are designed to, detect, things on the ground like tanks or things in the sky, planes and things like that. But you can fool them into, hallucinating, a bunch of vehicles in the scene, or actually evade detection. So there's these patterns that you can actually place in the scene that allow you to do that. That's just one method, but there are others out there. So the worst is sort of yet to come, but we know about these vulnerabilities. From things like when I was at MITRE, we stood up MITRE Atlas. That kind of has a whole landscape of tactics, techniques, and procedures that these adversaries are using to full AI or could use to full AI, as well as OWASP and some other places where we can see, what are the possibilities for actually, taking advantage of these AI systems. What are their vulnerabilities? What are their weaknesses?
Yeah, so you and I met about 24 years ago, give or take.
That's right.
We worked at a company, National Instruments. We worked alongside each other from a test and measurement perspective.
Yep.
And I ended up leaving, I believe, in 2003 timeframe. Give us a little bit of a story. Part of this podcast, Josh, as our listeners and viewers understand, is understanding the story behind these entrepreneurs, these folks that are making some big change.
Yeah.
And you and I kind of lost touch briefly, and then we reconnected recently. So give us an idea, Josh, of
Yeah.
sort of let's actually work backwards.
Okay.
We're gonna challenge you to work
I
backwards.
like
So
that.
I know that you're the CTO of Fire Mountain Labs. Give us an
Correct.
idea of what that role is,
Yeah.
and then let's work backwards. Let's try that out.
Yeah, this is good. Haven't done this one before. So CTO, co-founder of Fire Mountain Labs. We started this up in April. Really focused around AI security and AI kind of maturity, AI readiness, consulting and services. So we kept running into in our past people quite not understanding AI, quite not understanding how they're going to bring it into their organization, how they're going to secure it, how they're going to use it responsibly, how do they train their employees, sort of question marks across the board. And so we created this company to do exactly that. So in my role, I've got a research background. We'll get to that since we're going backwards. But that's kind of what I'm looking at is, what's the landscape of AI security? Where is, all of this headed? What's the landscape of AI? What's next? Obviously we have agents, agentic AI, all of that's coming. But what's beyond that? How do we, continue to innovate within this space? And then looking at applying to, research grants and research, institutions to continue some of the work that we've been doing in the past.
That's very exciting. So let me ask you a question before you notch it back to the next career step.
Yeah.
When you say beyond the agentic sort of
Yeah.
AI, I can't imagine what could be there. I mean, the whole idea, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm a very novice student of this domain. So yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. An agent or agentic AI is when you have these quote unquote agents or like avatars that can kind of act on their own. They can make their own decisions within a certain set of guardrails so that you're not having to be working step by step to give them instructions and all that. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So really the simplest definition I usually give is, I mean, you understand what an LLM is. Now give that LLM access to tools. And so once that LLM has that autonomy, that level of access to tools, they can do things for you. Very, very positive. I use them. However, you do want to, as you mentioned, put constraints around them. What can they not have access to? What do you need to be involved with as far as decision making and things like that? But yes,
And
that's
when you say LLM, you mean large language model.
correct. Yep.
So what's beyond that? I mean, I can't
Yeah.
imagine like what's
Um,
there.
so
It's like
there's
the Big Bang over here. What's
yeah, yeah. So
what happened before?
there's several researchers that I've been following for many years. A couple of them come from computer vision backgrounds, which is my background. So I've known them for a long time. Like Fei Li is one, obviously everybody knows that name. She just released an article with some folks that really lays out why large language models aren't going to be the path to AGI, for example. And so that's artificial general intelligence. So that's where a lot of the money is kind of being invested right now in the AI space. So you see huge moves at Meta, huge moves at OpenAI. All these organizations are trying to attract talent to build out these foundational models. However, some names like that, Fei Li, Yann LeCun, others, have been saying for a long time that these models that are purely based on language, no other data, really can't get us there. That's not how we learn as humans. That's not how learning sort of takes place in the natural world. So there are other architectures that are being designed right now that will definitely replace LLMs on the march for AGI. However, that's kind of a different conversation. AI is here to stay in some form or another. So we will see continued development in the LLM space. We will see continued development in the multimodal model space, where audio, video, imagery, all that kind of stuff is kind of pulled into these models. And then we'll also see a march towards smaller versions of all of these models. So edge device capabilities, where the models can actually fit, on your phone or even smaller devices.
Yeah, that's remarkable. I have a kind of a funny story regarding at least ChatGPT. This is about 3 years ago. when it was just beginning to proliferate, right? Very early on, maybe 2.5 years ago. And my son had an English assignment that was due.
Yeah.
And I happened to walk in the living room when he was doing his homework, and he very quickly put his phone away. And immediately I knew what was happening. And I went up to him and I confronted him about what he was doing. And he eventually admitted he was using ChatGPT. So on one side, I was very disappointed because this is literally an English class and he's having to learn foundational components of English.
Yep.
But on the other side, I was proud because he was using what is really just a tool.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of issues with people sort of relying too much on the large language model tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So reliance is one of the big risks. So when we're working with clients and we're talking about what are the risks within your organization? What are the risks with AI generally? Over reliance is definitely up there. That's one that we have to discuss. It's often overlooked. But if you've experienced this where you're using AI for something and it happens to go down for half an hour and you can't continue because what you were doing is locked into this chat, that you've created, then you know exactly what this is. You can't go on. You can't even see the things that you've done with this chat
Mhm.
in the past half hour or whatever. So the over reliance is a big issue. However, there are mitigations to that. So the mitigations are things like how to use it responsibly. How do you use it without over reliance? How do you use it in specific cases? So the English assignment is a great one. I actually have a good friend here in San Diego who's a professor at SDSU and writing. And she, 2 years ago was very, resistant to using AI, and pretty much the whole university was very wary of it, using these sort of essay checkers and things like that to see if AI was somewhere in there. But now they're really encouraging the use of AI in very specific situations. So, for example, they're given a topic, they don't know much about the topic. Cool, go use it to research. Don't necessarily use it to write your paper, but use it to do things that will help you write your paper. And so there's kind of forward-looking ways of using it responsibly.
Yeah, that's an interesting use case. That's something that I do. We created. It's probably going to be out after this podcast airs, but we created a podcast called "Thriving Through AI Hell," basically.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's the darker side, if you will, of not necessarily the specific security issues you were just talking about.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we did is, and I did in particular, is I was putting stuff on paper, right, in Word, just getting my ideas out, and I
Yeah.
wasn't worried about the grammar. I wasn't worried about necessarily the punctuation, or I mean, I still kind of did, but I laid everything out because I wanted to get it from my head onto the paper.
Yeah.
Once I did that, I cleaned it up using ChatGPT, and I sent it to one of my team members. She looked at it and she added her own pieces, but it's a different voice.
Yeah.
I tend to talk in a very syncopated kind of way,
Okay.
and her voice is very direct, even not so melodic again. I'm not saying it's as melodic necessarily, but hers is different than mine.
Yeah.
But we were able to smooth it out for our audience
Yep.
for this document we're preparing. So that's great.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Let's take it back a notch. So before Fire Mountain Labs,
Yes.
where were you there?
Yeah. So before that, I was the chief of AI security at Cranium, which was a kind of a new role. I don't think anybody had that specific role before, but it was to kind of call out the importance of AI security. That's certainly coming, for industry, and government and academia, kind of all across. And so in that role, really the goal there was twofold. One, lead internally, so lead R&D, lead the AI engineering staff, and the AI security staff. So lead them in a direction of what are we going to build out product wise? What are we going to try to approach from a market perspective? AI security is massive. Just like cybersecurity, there's just too many things that one organization can do kind of at once. So what do you focus on? Data security? Do you focus on vulnerability management, understanding the risks of AI, threat intelligence? How do you understand where threats are coming from? That kind of thing. Monitoring, actually, looking in the ecosystem live, trying to detect things that are happening. And so, really trying to set the stage. What's our roadmap? What are we actually going to build here? So that's kind of internally my role, and then externally, continuing that thought leadership. So, I was on a panel for trying to augment copyright law, for example, so that they would allow red teaming for foundational models, which is very important if you're trying to understand the security of these models, but you're trying to get past the fine print that says you cannot red team my model. So trying to get some headway there. Trips to Congress, for example, to meet with committees, try to augment bill language, for example, that would allow more funding for AI security, that would push the language in the right direction, educate the folks that are there on what AI security is. Continue, publishing articles, publishing papers, things like that. I run a conference at SPIE that I created 2 years ago around assurance and security of AI-enabled systems. So continuing to do those kinds of things. So those were kind of the main parts of that. And so that's and I guess I could go backwards. Kind of how I ended up there is I was at MITRE for 4 years, leading a department around AI security and perception. And that's when I met, some of the folks at Black Hat. So 2023, summer 2023, I met them. Was fascinated by kind of their story, their kind of goals, and that's where I made kind of that jumping off point. But MITRE is really kind of what set the stage for me personally for kind of the cybersecurity, AI security stage. I was doing some of this work before MITRE, but MITRE is very known for its cybersecurity. Everybody kind of appreciates that, and then internally, yeah, they really are some of the best and brightest folks that I've ever worked with in this space.
So you're essentially the canary in the coal mine for Skynet?
Yeah, it's funny. That does come up a lot. Skynet comes up. Obviously the Terminator scenes. Hal, obviously comes up. Yeah, it's we actually had a marketing video back at Cranium that was funny. It went through some of those scenarios. What should you be afraid of? And then we used some sort of a chatbot. Like the Canadian Airlines example. Like this is what it actually looks like. Like this is what the AI fears you think are, and they're really just it's actually a chatbot that's going to release all your customer data to the world.
Yeah.
That's the real
What
fear.
as you were saying these things about your experience with Cranium and MITRE,
Yeah.
I had a random analogy in my mind, and I tend to have these sometimes. So in a matter of speaking, you are a bit like an anesthesiologist in the OR.
Hmm.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
I didn't know this, but the person in the OR that rules and
Yeah.
makes all can pull the plug, can stop the surgery, can do whatever is the anesthesiologist.
Okay.
They're sitting at the head, they're monitoring the body, and you can have a brain surgeon, you can have a heart surgeon, the world's most famous or most prolific heart surgeon. If that anesthesiologist sees things that he or she doesn't like, they
Mhm.
can pull the surgery.
Okay.
And it's happened. I have a buddy who's an anesthesiologist, and he said sometimes he's pulled it,
Yeah.
and the surgeon has been pissed
Yep.
because guess what? If the anesthesiologist sees you're decomposing and you're decompensating,
Yeah.
then they're going to pull it, and that's it. So, in a matter of speaking, you're watching the body, you're watching what's
Yeah.
going in, what's going out, and you're a bit of a sentry for that. Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. I see your point. So, another person, actually, somebody at Cranium mentioned once. Okay, so you're telling us that we have cancer. There's security problems with this AI that we're trying to, enable and invest tons of money in. but you're not telling us like how to get rid of it. You're just telling us that you have the cancer. And so that's kind of I think where we were, in the early days of this.
Mhm.
We know there's problems, we know there's vulnerabilities, we've exposed them. We can attack your systems and show you that these things are real. But what are the real mitigations? And so that's
Yeah.
that's that's the point. So one of them certainly turn it off. That's a classic cybersecurity solution. Certainly in an incident response kind of plan. Where something does go really wrong, you want to be able to pull the lever and turn the system off. Sometimes people don't plan ahead. They don't know how to do that. They don't know where they would actually pull those levers. So that's very important in the kind of architecture phase of cybersecurity around AI. But to your point, yeah, I think it is interesting seeing kind of everyone starting to experiment. This has been going on for a couple of years now, and it's getting even more steam now, where people are maybe they have a sandbox where they're doing things and they think they're doing them safely, but then they bring a data set in that actually has some customer data or might have some proxy data that they think is not close enough to their customer data, but it actually is, or something like that.
Mhm.
And then problems can occur. So then data leakage can happen. If they're training models on that data is now in that model. So we recommend things like retrieval augmented generation. Like so, there's ways around kind of the problems that we're seeing. But kind of that first step is to your point. The first step is no. There are things you need to be thinking about. There are problems that you need to be aware of.
That's very well said. I think when you look at the potential pitfalls that can occur in business,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't give enough credence to these sorts of things.
Yeah.
Rewind the clock 10 years, and cybersecurity was just make sure you have a good virus scanner on your computer.
Yeah. That's right.
And now the level of sophistication that's been required to maintain safety in your own organization against cyber thugs
Yeah.
is just enormous. And I have friends that run cyber security companies, and we talked briefly, and it's just the fact that those didn't exist 15 years ago.
That's
And
right.
now there's entire teams that come in to make sure that you're legit. Do you foresee a time when every organization is gonna have a chief AI officer of some sort?
Yes, certainly chief AI officer. I think that is coming. You're already seeing some organizations adopt that. It's interesting, where is this going to fit in? That's a little bit unsure. People are still trying to figure out who owns AI right now without that role. So somebody's going to have to kind of wear that hat.
Mhm.
But who is your AI expert? Who is your AI advocate within the organization? Who's going to be thinking about not only the positives, the things that we want to do with AI, the things that we want to experiment with and innovate on, but also the security side. And the security side right now is kind of ending up in the CISO's lap, for example. So the CISO organization, they're kind of commonly, obviously, in charge of the security side of the house, but they might not be educated on AI. They don't know these AI specific vulnerabilities. Maybe they think that the tools that they currently have are going to handle these AI security vulnerabilities. Right now, they very much are not. So what does that future look like? And I think for sure, chief of AI officer, that's definitely one that's coming. We may see some more roles like that kind of round out the C suite.
Okay. Let's go back one more level in your career path, and then I
Yeah.
wanna really dive more into what you're currently doing. So what were you before MITRE?
Yeah, so before MITRE, I'll give two because they're related. I was at SPAWAR, which now is called NIWC Pacific. It's a Navy lab here in San Diego. I was doing a lot of research around AI, trying to make everybody aware. Back then, it was called machine learning. Nobody was attaching AI to what we were doing. Now that's kind of taken over. But we were really trying to convince everyone that machine learning was an area that needed to be paid attention to and invested in for particularly DoD applications. So deep learning was exploding back then. I had gotten a scholarship from UT Austin. That's how I ended up there, and continued some of that research on real world applications of machine learning and computer vision. So things like maritime ship detection. So extremely hard problem. The background on that is water. That water is constantly changing. There's nothing you can really do to kind of subtract that from a scene.
Yeah.
The objects are very small, typically in video and in satellite. So detecting these things is very difficult. You don't have a lot of training data, so that was kind of the research. So I led several research projects back then around image quality, video quality, detection of maritime assets, tracking, all sorts of things, augmented reality. So lots of different aspects of the computer vision problems that sort of were in academia, but were kind of more difficult to solve in a Navy and maritime setting.
What year
Um,
was this?
this was 2012 to about 2019. Yeah.
Okay, so you're like one of the OG AI guys. Sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, back before it was cool or before it was even called AI. And then just to follow up, briefly was at Shield for a year, Shield AI, who they're still around, they're doing great. But back then we were building a quad rotor, very much based on some of the work that we were doing at Nywick Pack, with some other folks that also moved to Shield from there. So that was a really interesting time, applying computer vision to an actual quad rotor vehicle, loading these models directly onto the vehicles themselves. And the whole point of that was for them to autonomously navigate through buildings and things like that, map them out, find people, other objects that are in the scenes, and then bring that back to the operators.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And before that, you were at NI roughly, or you went to
Yeah,
school. You got your
so
PhD.
exactly. So PhD at UT, but before that, definitely, yep, National Instruments. Yeah.
A lot of our audience that listen to the podcast are really across the board. We've got business leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. You got rank and file folks that are just doing their job. You've got retirees. It's a whole smattering.
Yeah.
What would you say as a message, whether warning or whatever it might be? What message would you give
Yeah.
our audience regarding AI security?
So I would say, uh, do your due diligence. So AI is here. It's here to stay in some form or another. What we recommend for first steps when you're not sure what to do, do the following. So set up an AI policy. So do you have an AI use policy in your organization? What models are you allowing people to use? What things do you strictly forbid? How are you going to enforce that? How are you going to train your organization on that policy? But first and foremost, have the policy. Step two, and these can be swapped with each other, but build an AI council or an AI committee, AI steering committee of some sort, bringing leaders from your organization, so across the organization, so legal, HR, data science, so it's people from your CTO organization. You need people from the security organization. Bring them together. Talk about how you want to innovate with AI. Talk about who is going to be in charge, who's going to take the ball when it comes to some of these topics that we've been discussing, and then start innovating. So what are you going to allow in your ecosystem? Maybe the CEO said every department is going to have to have at least two AI initiatives over the next 6 months. So how do you organize that? How do you track that? How do you measure or ROI and things like that? Risk, for example. So start kind of building out your company's approach to those things.
Those are very well said, Josh. How would you react to you know who Jeffrey Hinton is, of course.
Yes.
How do you react to the fact that he said that there is a 20% chance that AI will basically eliminate the human race in the next 30 years?
Yeah. So I think it's similar to what we've seen in the past with other huge leaps in technology. We saw this with nuclear energy. nuclear weapons, obviously. We've seen this before with other types of technology. So I think it's good. It's a healthy conversation to have. It's good to have skeptics. I think right now we don't have the kind of AI capabilities that would cause us that kind of harm, but we need to be thinking about it for sure. I mean, Isaac Asimov forever ago had his laws of robotics, right? So we need to be forward thinking. We need to be thinking about how we train these systems, how we use them responsibly, ethics. How we haven't really talked much about ethics right now during this podcast, but I mean that's a huge topic. So what's the divide right now? Technology divide from the wealthy nations to the poor nations is massive. Is AI going to help that, or is it going to completely exacerbate that divide? Right now, probably the latter. So we need to be thinking about these things. So I'm not really looking at the kind of doomsdayers as oh, they're crazy, whatever. There's nothing like that happening. It's more like they are warning about the real AGI that's coming. So that real AGI will happen. It won't be with the current technologies that we have, but we will see some major leaps in the next decade or so that will bring us closer to that. And so, what do we do when it does come? And so, I think he's making important points about being prepared for that. So, our other folks out there, Ray Kurzweil is another one that's been talking about this for a long time with his book on the singularity. So I think it's a healthy conversation to have, and we should be having it. But some people tend to latch on to those comments as that's the reality right now, and it's not quite there.
Yeah, we see that as well. The foundation of one of the foundation pieces of this podcast has to do with stoicism. The
Yeah,
idea that the world is going to be the world. You can't control it. You can only control what is in this world.
yeah,
And as business leaders, we have sometimes a sense to want to be reactionary instead of more respond. And I've had several conversations with my peers. I run a company, IR Labs, and I have friends that we have casual conversations about AI. And I've seen from one extreme to the other. I've seen a buddy of mine. Won't really talk about the industry because you'll know who he is probably, but he's like, I will never use effing AI.
yeah,
I'm gonna dig my heels in. I'm never gonna hire or bring on an AI person. I'm never gonna have these agents, and we're just gonna do everything old school.
yeah,
That's one side.
yeah,
Then I got other friends on the other side of the coin that are adopting it as fast, as quickly,
yeah,
and as widely as possible.
yep,
And I've got a bunch in between. What do you have to say about that
yeah.
theater I just put in front of you?
No, it's so interesting because I have exactly the same thing. Um, you know, the folks that don't want to adopt it, I get it. There's people that still don't have smartphones. There's people that still don't have any social media accounts. So we're always going to have that. We're always going to have people that are they're not even resistant necessarily, more like agnostic. I don't care about it. Like that's not something I want to bring into my world. And depending on their business, they may be able to do that and be successful and be just fine. We're not really seeing a lot of businesses these days. Obviously the people we were talking about, we're talking with are very, technology driven. So AI is going to touch their space at some point, even if it comes to a third party. I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is that if you're working with third party at all, chances are they either have AI in their systems or they're working on it now, and it's going to sneak into your ecosystem, which is kind of something we haven't talked about. But shadow AI is something to be aware of. So I would say, to that side of the house, good on you if you can do that, and that's what you want to do. I have no problems with that. Obviously, I'm trying to help people that are trying to adopt AI, and just be aware of their vulnerabilities and adopt it safely and securely. On the other side of the house, you have even further than what you said, you have the AI psychosis. So the people that have used it so much that now you kind of have people thinking that they've solved really important, world problems, with just them and their chatbot.
Hmm.
And you get this soundboarding effect, where you're the greatest thing in the world, and you've solved this huge problem. Like, oh, I know, this is amazing. Let's go to the next problem. And so they're just in this little cave with them and their AI, and they've kind of separated themselves from the world. You're seeing a lot of this. There's been some research about this. So I think there's power users that are very effective at using AI, that know how to integrate it into their workflows and how to take advantage of all these technologies. And then there's people that have taken it a little further and to some little scary territories that we need to be aware of.
The following comment that I'm going to make, tell me what you think about it and tell me if you think it's going to happen. And if so, when?
Okay.
Do you believe that a $1 billion company will come to fruition with one employee in
Yes.
the future?
Yes.
How
So
far away are we from that?
so we've already seen one sell for over 1 million, with one employee. So that was just a couple months ago, I believe. So we're probably the way things are going right now with funding and the excitement around AI. VCs are still excited to fund AI companies. We may see a little bit of a slowing down about that. I've got a paper where I talk about AI winters and how those kind of work. Um, so I would say with the current trajectory, maybe 2 to 3 years, something like that. $1 billion
Wow,
one person company.
that's ridiculous.
Whether or not
Using
whether or not it's actually worth $1 billion, that's a different thing. But it will get valuated at $1 billion.
I'm sure. Yeah, with a whole cacophony of agents doing the work
Right.
with some magic tech stack of some sort. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Here's another question. Imagine you and I are back in Austin, Texas in 2001, 2002,
Yeah.
hanging out at the Salt Lick, drinking a beer out of an ice chest because, of course, it's a dry county.
Yeah.
And you get a phone call and you walk away from the crowd. And on that phone is
Mm,
Josh Harguess, 2025,
yeah.
right now. What message would you give that 24-year-old kid there at
Yeah.
the Salt Lick?
Besides, put all your money in NVIDIA, because that's an obvious one. I actually was at a 2005, I believe, a supercomputing conference in Austin, and NVIDIA showed, very early days of what they were building hardware-wise, and also their CUDA that they had just, I think they maybe had an alpha or something like that, and I was like, "Wow, that's really interesting." I was working on the supercomputing side at TAC, on some of their machines, and this was a completely different approach. So definitely that. Also, and I've said this in some other places, but I'm from a computer vision background. I knew as soon as deep learning hit, neural networks were gonna take the main stage and really drive a lot of the innovation going forward. That was very clear. Computer vision led the stage for a while, so I was very happy about that. That was the data hungry side of the house was definitely imagery, video. That's massive amounts of data, and so we were able to make lots of progress there. What I didn't see coming is that language would be the place where we
Mm.
would see the huge leaps that we saw in 2022, 2023 in this space. So I think I was blindsided by that. Some other folks, in my field were definitely blindsided. Not that we didn't see the leaps coming, just that's not where I expected it to come from. I thought it was going to be maybe a combination of text plus imagery or something like that. And it really was just pure language models. And I think that was pretty surprising. So I would definitely tell young Josh, like, pay attention to NLP, natural language processing, pay attention to some of these things. Interestingly, I at UT when I went back to grad school, I wanted a neural nets class, and they didn't offer it because neural nets had died.
Mm.
So neural nets were no longer in favor. We couldn't figure out how to utilize them. It really came down to like computing power, not getting enough data into them to train them appropriately. There were all these kind of reasons why
Mhm.
people got away from neural nets, and so I said, okay, I guess I'm gonna have to learn about those later. and, and sure enough, yeah, everybody did.
Yeah, that's remarkable that, I didn't think language either. I mean, as these things started to come up,
Yeah,
language seems so difficult and nuanced.
yeah,
I think that, machine learning, you're dealing with pixels, you're dealing with intensities, and I'm not obviously in that domain, but I know enough
yeah,
to understand that it should be simple compared to language. Language is crazy because I could say something in two different intonations or two different, you flip a word and it
yeah.
completely makes the meaning opposite.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And another piece, because I've been involved with some of the interesting research in the past. Like there's this MURI. These are multi-university research initiatives that was talking about kind of scene understanding and common sense understanding from scenes. And so, one argument that's going on right now, and this is also in the Feifei Li article that's recent, is can these language models actually understand the physical world? Can it understand the world that we really live in? And the research so far says definitely not. And so we'll need things like computer vision. We'll need like embodied AI, where you're actually AI is actually in the world,
Yeah.
interacting with the world, in order to get there. And so that there's still a lot to be done. Obviously, we're at the early stages of this, but yeah, agreed. I think I'm still surprised at how far we've been able to get with pretty much language alone in the past couple of years.
Yeah, that's for sure. I'm gonna take that question. I'm gonna take it in a slightly different direction.
Okay.
I'm gonna hand you this magic phone, and you're going to call Josh Harguess when he's 75 years old,
Yeah.
and he's got a long beard, and he's wh- what what question? What would you want to know from a 75-year-old Josh?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. I would want to know, I mean, same kind of thing. What's the next NVIDIA? Where should I put my money? I think that's an easy one. But I would also want to know, what what's coming. What are the really interesting, nuanced things that are coming that I'm not thinking about right now. I missed the fact that it was going to be language that was going to make a huge leap. Whereas I was very focused on computer vision aspects of machine learning and AI. So what are the things that I'm missing? What's coming on the horizon that I'm not quite seeing? I think I would definitely ask, how has quantum affected your world? Because that's one that we haven't talked about yet, but that is coming. It's coming. It's definitely in the background because we don't have anything like we have AI where we can point to and say, there's the use case. This is how it's going to affect your world. Here's how you would use it in business. Quantum is in the background. It's going to sneak up at some point. And when it does, it's going to break all of our codes. It's going to break, cryptography. It's going to break security. There's going to be obviously positive aspects of it as well. Computation is going to go through the roof. Cost wise, it's going to be reduced. There's all these promises, energy as well. So I would definitely want to know, like, where is that tipping point for quantum, and like, has that affected your life? And then there's the combination of AI, AGI, quantum kind of all colliding. So, like, what is your world like now? Like 75 years. So that's, I'm not gonna say exactly how old I am, but yeah, it's a few decades away. So is the world drastically different now based on these technologies, or is it pretty much the same? And these things, kind of just became integrated into your life, and we're all as well.
Yeah, that question I ask most of my guests,
Yeah,
and every time I ask it, I also ask it in my own head
yeah,
about my own life.
yeah.
And obviously, we collect more information as we go along in life.
Hmm.
And one of the beauties of having this podcast and interviewing folks is that my own world expands even bigger. So
Yeah.
I asked myself that question recently, and
Okay.
I'm always getting I'm coming back to almost a reversal situation in that I'd just love to go live in a mountain lake town and just farm and drink wine and smoke cigars and eat prosciutto and not worry about this
Right.
bigger world happening in the background.
Yes.
So, Josh, as we wind up today's podcast, tell our audience how they can find you, how they can understand how to get in touch with you, and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So LinkedIn. So I've got a profile there. Harguess is my last name, Harguess. That's the easiest way to get in contact with me. We post pretty regularly there from our Fire Mountain Labs account as well about thought leadership, things that are coming. We've given some recent talks at B-Sides Las Vegas. We've got a couple of talks coming up. One at CAMLIS, which is a research conference around adversarial machine learning. Also a NATO symposium around AI security and assurance. So we've got some things cooking that will be out there. And I have a conference, SPIE conference that's called Assuring and Securing AI-Enabled Systems. So that abstract call for abstracts is open right now. So if you're interested in submitting or learning more, find our call for papers. But yeah, pretty much LinkedIn is the easiest way.
That's great. I'm really glad we reconnected.
Yeah.
45 minutes just flew by, and I think we could easily talk for another 3-4 hours.
Agreed.
It'd be nice to have a little Shiner Bach to our side, but that'll be for the next time.
Perfect.
Well, thanks again, Josh, for your time, and we'll be looking forward to learning more about Fire Mountain Labs and yourself on your LinkedIn. And with that, we'll talk to you later.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Manny.
Cheers.
Cheers.